the feds can just have control over what frontier models are coming out now. Welcome to the new world of AI.
One of the biggest decisions that the LLMs are starting to answer is, who do I vote for? So that is an incredible soft power that these AI companies have.
Yeah, you just told me to use AI as much as possible, and so that's what I've been doing. Yeah, but they're like, yeah, you spent $100,000 last week. It could be creating viruses, creating a global pandemic. That's a real threat here.
Fully autonomous agent that somebody spun up and did everything. It was its own little ransomware game. We are now seeing an agent do all this on its own. And yes, this was a fumble, but it's a lesson learned for the attackers.
My name is Leor from Exploring ChatGPT, and I'm with Chris.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris. Also here, I represent Toxsec. I'm former NSA Marine Corps veteran and currently working at AWS in AI security.
Awesome. Thanks for your service, Chris.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we got some interesting stories to cover here. I think the main one is going to be pretty obvious for the AI users in the chat. It's a multifaceted topic, but I think just the one that really stands out is Fable 5 is back. And yeah, there's a few things about this. I'd like to get Chris's opinion on this as much as you can without giving too much insider information. I will say I've been very impressed by it. I'm going to be using it as much as possible until we're going to have to start paying out of pocket for it. So what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, obviously we've been covering the story. I'm pretty happy with it. I like to see Fable back in people's hands. Yeah, it's really good. I think that's, if you look at like the general consensus, people are very happy with it. Very powerful model. Yeah, use it while you can. So anyone who doesn't know, right now it's included as in your plan, but very soon here you're going to get cut off. So they're giving you a taste of the good model, and then they're going to cut you off. You can continue to use it, but it's going to be like a paper use, a paper token kind of a deal, and it is expensive. You're probably going to have to be a little more conservative with when and how you use it, but it's really good. What are your thoughts on it? You've been using it. I'd like to hear from you first.
Yeah, I was able to build a really nice app in 5 minutes that Opus couldn't do. I weirdly got rerouted when asking it to help me with something simple that I probably didn't need it for, that I thought it would do a better job at, which was just like titles and thumbnails. Maybe it was like sensitive information. It wasn't anything about cybersecurity, but it was about the government. So maybe there's something there where the government doesn't want Fable being used to talk about it, which would be weird. But I think the overall topic really for this first one is not just about Fable. Fable's like the clear standout topic here. But just to give a little bit of a background. So an executive order was set up to voluntary, quote unquote, pre-release access. So basically the feds can just have control over what frontier models are coming out now. And welcome to the new world of AI. This is not, we might not be seeing any more just free public releases, just of what we're used to. I'm interested to see where this all goes. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, me too. I do think it's interesting. They specifically go out of their way to say it's voluntary. But also we've seen two models now. So the ChatGPT 5.6 models and the Mythos class models both hit with those export controls and both basically being limited. It makes me wonder like how truly voluntary it is. If the threat is volunteer for this, or else we're going to hit you with export controls, then it's more the new standard to me. And yeah, effectively that sets us up into a place where the federal program gets to decide what models can release. So OpenAI is 5.6, and they're currently bound to just 20 companies that they had to vet. And interestingly is for OpenAI, all three of their tiers are under this. So it would be as if Claude came out and they're like, okay, now Sonnet, Opus, and Mythos are all gated for your newest one, right? We did see Anthropic just released Sonnet 5 to the public. But with OpenAI, they have their new system, which is called Sol, Terra, and Luna. Sol being the best, Terra being mid, and then Luna being like the haiku, the fast one. So it's similar to Sonnet, Opus, Mythos. But even their Luna model is gated right now for 5.6. So there's a little bit of a difference. They're saying it's because even their lightweight model did get hit for high cyber capabilities. So that's interesting. We did see like I said, the public release of Sonnet 5. And I think this is interesting because Anthropic specifically went out of their way to make sure there wasn't cyber training in the model itself. So any cyber capabilities it has is strictly because it's like a side effect. It's an emergent property. But if you learn how to code, eventually you're going to learn how to break code. So it does have these residual cyber capabilities, but they specifically went out of their way to say this is not good at cyber, and the benchmarks do show that. It's a little bit of speculation because behind the scenes. So ostensibly, they went through the voluntary program. They showed Sonnet was not a threat, and they released it. So it'll be interesting to me to see if OpenAI follows in that steps and says, hey, our Terra and Luna models, they can be released, but maybe the Sol model is going to stay in Project Daybreak. Yeah, so I think as far as models go, it does seem that we're going to be doing this. There's a couple rumblings from some of the people like we talked about last week, where they're going to try to make this as an official framework, a framework that actually gets published, so that other people working on some of these open models are going to have to follow the same standards. If you somehow develop a new capability or you distill from a model, before you put it out to the public, the idea is that you're going to have to volunteer and submit to make sure the cyber capabilities are like manageable.
Yeah. I think one angle I just thought of that I didn't before is, and this will probably shift me back into using ChatGPT more. When 5.6 gets released to the public, when whatever suit decides it's ready, is it also going to have a limited release for a couple weeks and then you're going to have to pay out of pocket every time you use it? Or is OpenAI just willing to burn more money? And if they're willing to burn more money and 5.6 anywhere near as good as Fable, I don't really see a reason to continue using Fable. So that's going to be an interesting sight to see, I think.
That's a great point, because we do have a story later about the token cost, but token cost is real. And if we're spending a lot on Fable and they can release a good enough model at the subscriber price, so to me, I see it as the AI race continuing. Yeah.
Even if I have to pay like a little bit more per month, I might just do that personally.
Yeah. I am in a position where I can get like a lot of tokens, not on my dime, but I do have the $100 a month plan. If Anthropic's listening, I would pay the $200 a month plan for Fable. Yeah, it's good enough where I would upgrade, but I'm a little skeptical paying price per token, just because I've seen when you ask an LLM something these days, they're like agentic. So it decides, okay, do I want to spin up a sub-agent to do this? Do I need 10 sub-agents? So I've accidentally burned an entire session on one question because I asked it wrong and it fanned out these models and it's, okay, you're done. And that it's disappointing because, okay, now I have to wait 5 hours. But it's much better than I just spent $3,000 answering that question.
Yeah. I'm sure that they have their money guys in the background figuring this out and probably realize very quickly that even increasing the monthly subscription probably wouldn't be good enough to make this make sense for the public.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Plus, Anthropic just turned a profit, so I don't think they want to go backwards before an IPO.
They definitely don't. And I think you're absolutely right about that. We've all been speculating about subsidized token cost. Everyone gets the gist that these companies are not as profitable as they could be, but it's to get the consumer, right? It's the same pattern we saw with Uber and Lyft. They offered subsidized pricing to get people, I don't want to say addicted, but using their app all the time so it became the normal, and then the prices go up. That's just the name of the game. And pre-IPO, you're still in the acquire the consumer pays.
Yeah. 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 All right, I guess on to the next topic then. So we're still sticking on Anthropic here in regards to Claude. So California made Claude its statewide vendor June 29th. So talk about recent news. Yeah. So it's basically 50% off for every agency, already live at the DMV. I wonder what they're using Claude for in the DMV. That's the one place that I would prefer humans to be replaced by robots.
Yeah.
Medicaid and cyber defense. Is it a supply chain risk, or is California now a supply chain risk?
Yeah. Honestly, like that kind of does fit with the current political climate if you like look at the sides. Yeah, I think this is interesting because it's the first, like a lot of times when California does something, like there's many other states that follow, right? I forget what number it is, but it's one of the biggest or bigger economies in the world, not just in the United States. Signing a deal like this is pretty big. This happened just 5 days ago. And yeah, first of all, whoever negotiated 50% off, that's pretty aggressive. That's pretty good. Yeah, plus free training. So Anthropic is actually going to have people that they've deployed people who actually train these people how to use it. First of its kind deal that we've seen at the state level like this. And because it's California, I do expect other states to get on board with this. Super interesting because we do have currently it's a supply chain risk. In my opinion, that's going to have to fold, right? If we're really looking at this, you can't have a federal supply chain risk be adopted at an entire state level, right? Nobody's taking that seriously. And yes, it technically is on pause because they appealed and it's in court right now. At this point, I just expect it to be overturned. They're probably going to finally say, okay, it's not supply chain risk. I think some egos got in the way. Obviously, a lot of big players wanting to use Anthropic product for whatever they want. But yeah, DMV. I think I'm going to try to give it a chance because it's one of my least favorite things on earth to go to the DMV. If I don't have to fill out paperwork anymore and I can just have a conversation with Claude and he'll fill that out for me on the back end, I could get behind that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't think that California is going to change the current administration's supply chain risk label. Maybe Florida or Texas.
Yeah.
Not California.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
No, you're right, though. If Florida or Texas got a hold, yeah, maybe they could have a little more sway there. If anything, California doing it is just going to further antagonize the situation.
Probably. Yeah. Texas is probably going to go ChatGPT. So yeah, guys, if you use Claude, you're officially a Democrat. I use both, so I guess that means I'm a centrist. Which honestly, I feel like I am.
Honestly, I am right there. I'm not overly into politics. I hear both sides. It's interesting to me, but I kind of just stay more in the tech field.
Yeah.
I'll say there's two interesting points that came up when I was researching this. First is June 4th, there was a draft called the Great American AI Act, and they want to put transparency in front of frontier models, give them third-party audits, and force what it says here, 3-year preemption of AI state law. So effectively, they want to take the state's rights out of being able to regulate AI development and keep that as federal law. That was floated like 6 months back. Not sure what happened to it, but it's surfacing again. So that is conflicting with what we're seeing. We are starting to see these states all try to start to regulate AI on their own level. They want to have various levels of ownership. If your AI says something about self-harm, or yeah, it's okay to do that drug and it's not, or you're like, oh, there's no shellfish in that, and then you have an allergic reaction. There's a lot of lawsuits that are starting to pile up. And we actually, as a nation, haven't set the precedent on who owns that. Is the AI company responsible for the AI's bad advice if it leads to damages of some sort? So that is going to be a really big issue, because if they are vulnerable to that kind of lawsuit, that would greatly change how they allow users to interact with that. And already you'll see at the bottom is ChatGPT can make mistakes, don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple points there. One, I think that eventually these companies are just going to have enough money to not worry about lawsuits for the most part, or just pay it off. A couple million here, a couple million there, just a drop in the bucket. And two, I think it's pretty vague saying that states will have a 3-year whatever in terms of regulation. Like in terms of what? In terms of the models themselves, in terms of data centers being built, in terms of any legislate. What does that even really mean? If a state says that they don't want Anthropic to build a data center, or they don't want Elon to build a data center, or they want this model to be more or less biased, or whatever it might be, like that's a super vague statement. I don't really think that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. I think the states should be able to do what the states want to do. That's why there's state laws and there's federal laws. So yeah, and then whoever makes the right decision will end up getting a better future, whatever you think that decision might be.
I do agree with you. And I think it's interesting because the other point that I countered is a report that they are showing that the people are relying more and more on their LLMs to make decisions. And one of the biggest decision that the LLMs are starting to answer is, who do I vote for? So that is an incredible soft power that these AI companies have, right? It's shown in the past if you can ask a question that's maybe you shouldn't ask that, but you can ask it about different people with different political affiliations, and it'll answer some, and then it'll like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. It'll deny it. So behind the scenes, somewhere there's already a precedent for guardrails targeting specific groups or specific people, right? That does give you a very important soft power. If you're one of three companies and suddenly everyone's asking you, who do I vote for? You may have an incentive, or the government is aware of that and could have oh, do you want to release this model? We need this guardrail in place when people ask who to vote for, right? Now, I'm not saying any of that has happened, but there's a very specific danger there that once you have something that's going to tell people how to vote for, who to vote for, and it also is, okay, let me summarize the issues. And who's to say the way it summarizes it, the way it presents that information isn't softly biasing you into voting yes or no. So this is, I think, one of the biggest, less technical risks, but it's a social risk. This is a form of power consolidation and soft power that I don't know if we've ever seen before. These are propaganda machines at a certain point. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, if you're asking a chatbot who to vote for, they should probably not vote. That's my opinion. But yeah, you make some great points. Asking it to summarize, let's say you're not just plain out asking who should I vote for, you're asking what does this person stand for? What type of laws are they trying to get passed? And then the same for the other person. Yeah, I could see where bias obviously can fall into play there. I did actually just put out an article today about AI bias and how the FTC is trying to legislate this now. Basically, they're saying that in effect, these companies trying to make their chatbots sound not too woke, but woke enough, or not too politically leaning this way, but not that way, and trying to make them just an unbiased machine, which is not even a reality. That's not really possible. That it's a pretty dangerous path that we're heading down. So I'm interested to seeing where this all goes. And it's the fact that the government's actually getting involved in AI bias in general, I think is pretty interesting. But that's a good point. But yeah.
No, that is too. Once you have all these regulatory bodies trying to put, like you said, bias, right? I mean, I just try to think of it from a technical viewpoint, how it would enforce a true neutral stance. That alone is hard just because humans are biased. Training data is biased. You're going to have a set amount of training data. You're going to influence a bias somewhere. And there's special techniques you can do to help remove that. But it's always going to be there somewhere. And then if you're just going to get a massive fine because they didn't like one answer to one question they asked. I just wonder about enforcement mechanisms. And it's also a generative technology. You can ask the same question 100 times, you can get different answers. Do you get fined on 4 of them? Yeah, that's a lot of technical challenges, but I think one of the big themes we're seeing here with all these stories is governments have woken up to this as being like a real threat and power and tool in the future of society. So now everyone's trying to adopt it and regulate it, and we're coming out with all these frameworks and standards and policies. So we really are seeing the AI space mature, and we're seeing all these people try to influence like where it's going to land, because the decisions we're making now are going to affect us for decades to come. It's an interesting place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, on to the next topic then. Everybody's a lawyer now. I think people get the gist there, but basically the cost of basically drafting legal paperwork is near zero. And so the courts are basically drowning. I spoke about a similar topic with Sam Illingworth and like just gave a bunch of examples of actually like real deal lawyers, judges, all the above in the legal framework actually having real life consequences to doing things like this. There was one example of somebody using Copilot, for some reason using Copilot.
Why Copilot? We don't even talk about that one.
Not reviewing the output, using it in the court. And then there was a bunch of hallucinations within the paperwork, and that person got in trouble. That's just like, I don't even have the source or the reference right now in front of me. That was another stream, but there's so many examples of this. There was one here for today A Florida couple got a dismissal with prejudice over a few $100 dispute. So th- there's literally, from what I recall, thousands already of cases of people using AI in the courtroom and getting things wrong. And I think that the main reason that it usually happens is because there's no human review.
Yeah. Yeah, some of this I had a specific angle, but you're absolutely right. When I was researching this, the hallucinations, particularly on, like, precedent and, like, previous courts, like, it looks official, but if you, like, try to find it, it doesn't exist. That's been known for a while. Similar to you, I did a previous story. A guy in Nevada was accused of committing a crime. AI, like, the lawyer, like, doing the accusation, all that, used AI to help convict him. And then a year later, something ridiculous, they were like, "Oh, yeah, half of that was hallucinations." And the defense lawyer on the appeal, like, showed that, and it, like, didn't matter. They didn't care. It's interesting. This to me this is a double-edged sword because I move around a lot, and I've been in a bunch of states. And earlier this year, a state sent me something, and it basically was like, "Hey, you didn't pay taxes." It was like a comptroller, and they basically said, "Hey, you didn't pay taxes for this year. I'm going to look at your income, and I'm going to assume what that tax was, and I'm going to put a fine and then a late fee and then interest due." It was a very large bill they sent me, and I wasn't in the state for that year. So I was like, "This is I don't know what to do." That I was like, "Hey, I'll take a look at this, Claude." And it drafted a response and a reply, and I scrubbed it from PII, so I didn't include any of my private data, but it drafted exactly what to say, what to challenge, and then I mailed it back, and then 6 months later, it was dropped. I wouldn't have known what to do. I probably would have had to go to an attorney to help me understand it because it was filled with legalese. Was that irresponsible of me? I don't know, but it worked because it helped me understand what was happening. I see, okay, that's good. But then now imagine the amount of people. America is already a very litigious place to live. And now everybody's just starting to sue each other because anytime anything's inconvenient, they're just having these AI chatbots draft up a very official sounding lawsuit and then sending it in. So the courts are absolutely getting overwhelmed, which is pretty crazy. And also, I don't think right now we have any hard penalty. If you're caught and something was hallucinated, we don't have a precedent to say, oh, you can be disbarred for that. In my opinion, there should be something like that if you're just relying on AI and not even looking over the course yourself. There's we're in this weird place where this is all new, and I don't know how we're going to handle it on a system level.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm sure you've heard this before too. A lot of people are saying AI will replace lawyers. I think maybe some lawyers. I think in court specifically, you're still going to need real deal Holyfield lawyers. But I think when it comes to contracts and things like that, but regardless of what you're talking about, there still has to be human review, right? Like I've written plenty of contracts using AI, but I'll still read it myself. It's just simple. Why wouldn't you? Especially in the courtroom. So yeah, I agree with you. There needs to be some precedent set that if you did this and there was a obvious mistake, yeah, you should be, I think, prosecuted for that. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, yeah, and it does seem like we're a little slow with all this, but we're getting there. I think that we are pushing into that space. It's a lot of new challenges, but these are very smart people. I'm sure they're going to set a precedent eventually. It's just we're watching it happen in real time when the system is designed to be slow. And yeah, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. If anything, maybe AI will help reduce bureaucracy. That might be better in general, especially at the DMV.
That
Yeah. So yeah, on to the next one, a token apocalypse. I've seen a lot of funny shorts flying around lately of someone's in the office and their boss comes in. They're like, "What's this bill from? Like, what are you doing?" And they're like, "Hey, you just told me to use AI as much as possible, and so that's what I've been doing." Yeah, but they're like, "Yeah, you spent $100,000 last month." I think on a very large scale, not just in the big companies, which we'll give some examples of the big companies like Tesla, for example, but on a very large scale, a lot of companies are starting to implement AI and they're just not aware of what's going on. And they're telling their employees to use the best, use Fable's back, use it. I don't care. We'll write it off. And then they get the bill at the end of the month. And we're like, what the hell happened? I thought
yeah,
this was like $100 a month subscription. Now it's tens of thousands of dollars. So yeah, there's a specific example in here. So Tesla is capping engineers at $200 per week starting July 6th, as well as some other big company examples of this. I'm sure for you, Chris, working at Amazon and having friends in big tech, like you maybe feel that similarly. But again, I don't know. Amazon's so big that probably just a drop in the bucket for them.
Yeah. So a big tech, we had not just Amazon, but a lot of big tech companies had leaderboards for the token maxing phase of this whole thing.
Token.
For those who don't know, the idea was like, don't think anymore, right? Your AI thinks for you. So obviously, the more tokens you use, the more productive you are as an engineer. I can't remember who said it, but there's basically a guy who says once a metric is gamified, the metric is useless. So yeah, if you're suddenly being judged on how many tokens you can eat, and you're like, you've gone to school, you're like a smart guy, you're working in big tech, what do you think they're going to do, right? So yeah, they just created these loops of infinitely complex questions. So like questions that are unsolved, like in mathematics right now. And it would just be like, go solve that. No, you're wrong. Go try again. And it was just like, so the amount of tokens and compute costs from these loops, and it would like fan out 20 different agents, each one being told it's wrong to fan out more agents. So yeah, and then the bill came. And so that the leaderboards were shut down pretty quickly. But now I think we're starting to see it. The idea was like you fire your software engineer and then you hire the one engineer with a bigger budget. But now like the math is actually coming back, and it's using AI is more expensive than just having your software engineer. So I don't think we're going to see like a total reversion or anything like that. These tools are here to stay, but I think we're going to find a much more sensible ground, right? So like Uber, for example, is one of the examples I have here. They had a 2026 token budget because they're a tech company. They're aware of what it costs, so they thought. By April, they had already burned through their entire year's budget. So just
Wow.
these models are like when they're solving complex questions, they're very expensive to run. So I think that's really what we're seeing is like it's starting to twist back like in favor of, okay, we're going to use AI, but it can't replace everyone because that would be much more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting thing for me here is this is the first example ever in history. And it's funny. You can say this about AI in so many different ways. And it's probably cliche. But when you truly think about it, especially at an enterprise level, this is the first time in human history that these companies are basically signing a blank check and just telling their engineers to go off and telling these agents to, and hopefully the agents aren't super overly ambitious. That's
Yeah.
basically what's happening here. And I think it's going to be, like I mentioned to you before, I wonder if these companies will ever be able to just truly nail down a subscription plan, even for huge tech companies, where they don't have to pay per token. Because you might have to hire a special team to just watch usage
Yeah.
at a large scale. Because who's actually going to be watching their usage? You type in a prompt, you get a response, check your usage, and then you just keep doing that. That would be nuts.
Yeah. I feel like you could engineer a board and create a display, but then, yeah, you're going to have somebody watching the board, looking at token burn rate week over week, month over month, like making sure it maps. So you're going to hire a new guy. There's going to be a new career, just a token manager or something. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. One of the anecdotes I saw here was a couple of people, pretty big builders on Twitter, started off with their Fable subscription, and they're already to the point where they're paying for token usage because they're builders, right? And because of the super sensitive guardrails, a lot of people are getting immediately pushed over to Opus 4.8. I think you had a similar experience a couple of times, but starting with Fable and then getting routed over, you still pay Fable for a lot of the processing, and then it decides, oh, I can't answer this, and then sends it to Opus. So we're seeing a lot of people get a relatively big bill. And if you look at the product, it pulls most of the cost, but it did the least amount of work. I thought that was interesting. So I think just token measurements, and the cost of token is going to be more discussed here soon.
Yeah. I think you should get your money back if that happens. Or
I
get your
do too,
tokens
right?
back. Yeah.
I don't want to pay Fable to build an app just to find out Opus 4.8 built it. Like, even if
Yeah.
it's a good app, it leaves a bitter taste in my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, interestingly enough for me, that It was unbelievable. I won't go through all I spoke to you about it before the stream, but it literally built this app in 5-10 minutes. And I tried to do it before Fable got re-released with Opus, and it wasn't hitting for me. Because I was making it for a friend who's not very technical, even less technical than I am, which I'm not very technical, and a real easy step-by-step with a README file, literally, and then Fable just did it, and it's a 15-minute setup.
It's
So,
awesome, honestly, though. I mean,
yeah.
I think that's like the AI optimist in me is like, that's what I want to see AI used for, is like building like the ability for anybody to build a tool that they need at any time. And they don't have to be like trained or go to school or be a tech bro or whatever it is, like democratizing the ability to build needs in real time. Like that's one of the top ones. And I'm like, yeah, let's focus on that. So to hear Fable, even anecdotally, it was used for that and it built something that works. Like that's cool. Let's focus on that.
Yeah. All you need is an idea and a dream
Yeah.
and some token money eventually, probably. So yeah, on to the next one here. People might have heard of Claude Science. This one's super cool, and I'm happy to see this finally roll out. I did make a post on Substack about this and tried to
I
like,
loved your post.
thank you, try to be like comical about it. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm super happy about this. I think this is the most underrated use case for AI for the benefit of humanity, and I think it'll shut down a lot of the doomers if if this actually rolls out nicely. I think this is really just the beginning. So basically, Claude Science, the reason why I think this is possibly the best use case for AI, is specifically for medical reasons. I think in the beginning, the overall maybe feel for a lot of people will be that they won't trust it, especially if you get into certain taboo topics, which I won't even mention. But eventually, once people realize that this actually works, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that eventually, and who knows how fast this will come, 90 to 99% of every human illness and disease could be solved using AI. So, what do you think about Claude Science, Chris?
I think it's cool. I've said this time and time again, security, healthcare, and education are like my top 3 use cases. And I think this is a meaningful step forward. I really like to see it. Every time I hear Claude, and this is slightly different, but Claude solves like an Erdos math problem or advanced. It helps some scientists just discover something, or even if it helped him organize his notes, and he was the one who did it, but it was like he needed the AI to help. I love to hear those stories. So this is a twofold story to me because the first one is they're releasing Claude Science. I think that's awesome. Let's empower the scientists, empower knowledge workers to use this. To answer a couple of questions, it's not like a new model. So you can still use Fable or Opus or whatever. What it is more of a workbench where you have a whole lot of curated skills and connectors. So the scientific community, there could be like a math library or something like that where it's okay, every time you do math, everyone in the community knows this is where you go from math, right? Think like Wolfram Alpha or something. So then what they did is, okay, let's connect Claude to Wolfram Alpha. So now when it needs to use math, instead of it using like a Gen AI reasoning, which is good, but could hallucinate, it's going to verify the math, like with a math engine, right? So that's awesome to me. And you just keep doing that. So they created this big curated library of all the tools that scientists are actively using in the field. And they know this because they bought several of these like bleeding edge scientific companies, including some that do bio research. And they're hiring these people, right? It's not just like me, like assuming what healthcare users work, right? And then they curated specific skills to interface with that. They're well aware of a lot of companies aren't going to want to send that kind of data over to Anthropic servers. So they also made it compatible with your own hardware. So you can use Claude for a lot of the reasoning, and you can use this Anthropic Science as like your approach. But all the data, all of the actual GPUs, whatever your need is for your laboratory can stay local to your laboratory. So that is like a huge enabler now, where you're not just extending all your proprietary off to Anthropic's infrastructure. So being able to create this like mix of, hey, now you can use all the tools you need with one centralized place for intelligence, and it'll stay local where you need it. That's a game changer in my opinion.
Absolutely. So like you named your big three being cyber, science slash medical, and then education. Not in any particular order. I'm not going to ask you for an order. I'll assume it's cyber first.
A little biased.
So I think there's a good point to mention here. In any like creation, anything that comes along with AI as well, specifically, there's going to be a good and a bad side. And so to give both angles, whether you're talking about cyber, finding vulnerabilities versus hacking, red team, blue team stuff, and you're talking about science and medical field, it could be curing diseases, curing cancer, all this great stuff. It could, and then on the other side, it could be creating viruses and
Mhm.
creating a global pandemic. That's a real threat here. So hopefully, in terms of guardrails like this, I think actually like science and medical might be number one on the list in terms of
Yep.
like massive risk. And then education too. There's so many positives, and I don't think that we're using it enough in education. But and then there's the other side of it where we've spoken about topics in previous streams of people, and this kind of relates to cyber as well, of like people hacking an entire database of student information or locking down. I don't remember what the exact topic was. It was during like some exam session and they locked everything
Mhm.
down. So
Canva, you couldn't access any of your student materials or turn in homework or anything. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So no matter what field it is, there's always going to be two sides to it. But I think this is where, yeah, there's some real threats here. So we have to be careful with what we do.
I agree. And I mentioned two things. The second one is I've mentioned a couple of times Anthropic and OpenAI, they're also positioning themselves as AI companies. But what else are they? They're also cybersecurity companies, right? And I think that's just a side effect of the way they're building intelligence. It's like that's just how it is, right? Now, the other thing with this story with Claude Science that maybe has gone under the radar, Anthropic isn't just getting into biomedical research. They're like becoming an actual biomedical laboratory. So they bought this company for $400 million, Coefficient Bio, and the thing they're doing here is creating a specific version of Claude with guardrails for biomedical research companies with the intent on creating, designing, and distributing drugs to people to cure diseases that people actually have. The flagship project that's going to run this is they are hiring the best in the world for obscure diseases. So the all of the diseases that the current front runner pharmaceutical technology companies have deemed either too hard to solve or they could solve it, but the economy of scale, there's only 40 people with the disease. It would cost too much money versus what they would extract. They make that kind of brutal assumption and decision. And what Anthropic wants to do here is become a partly a biopharmaceutical company and to develop custom drugs for these people who have obscure diseases. I think that's really cool. But it just like with cyber, that's red team, blue team. That absolutely means that they are going to have people in a lab who are going to understand effective bioweapons, right? To design these drugs, they're going to understand the red team aspect of it as well. There's already these hookups for Claude and CRISPR, and people can do their own gene editing. And we've seen some people already do that and inject themselves with it with unknown repercussions. Seeing Anthropic pivot into this biochemical medical use case, not just like to support it, but also to fund the research, hire the people, and do it themselves really shows you like the argument of some of these AI companies not just being AI companies, but because what they're going after is intelligence, kind of makes them an everything company. If you're doing bio and education and cyber, like effectively, like the company you're theoretically becoming is a company that just like outsources like intelligence, right? It's wild.
Yeah. Anything to justify the $1 trillion
The $1 trillion.
IPO valuation. We do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Claude Science, really cool. This next one, it's our last topic for today, and I really don't have the qualifications to speak about this. So I kind of want you to take the lead here, and I'll just ask questions. It's
Yeah.
called Jade Puffer, if I'm saying that correctly. It's basically an AI agent that ran its own ransomware with no human in the loop. I'm getting that correct. I don't know what it did, where it did it, or how this started, or how it ended. So what happened here, Chris?
Yeah. So I had to include one like cybersecurity one. This one was just particularly funny to me. We've talked about a couple of times, like I red teams. I've used the term APT, advanced persistent threat, where we're starting to see like AI be like a ransomware gang in and of itself. And that like even those people, they're starting to just outsource it to AI. And this was one of the first ones we've caught in the wild that from what all the researchers can tell was a fully autonomous agent that somebody spun up and it did everything. It was its own little ransomware gang. Um, but like anyone who's used AI knows that like there's always a hallucination somewhere. There's always like something that because of context it gets wrong and needs a human there for, right? And this I think this was just like a perfect example. Sysdig caught this. It's an AI agent that found a particularly popular vulnerability from 2025. So it wasn't like cutting edge. Anybody who's been around who would have patched this if you had a good cybersecurity team wasn't vulnerable. But there's still thousands of these boxes on the internet. So it basically what it does is it scans the internet, it looks around for this vulnerability, and then when it finds that, it does what basic like ransomware does. So it exploits the vulnerability, so it gets like some sort of user control on your machine, and then it scans around and it encrypts all the files. Right? That's typically what we see. And then you craft a message to the person, say, "Hey, I've encrypted all your files. If you want the files back, you pay me some Bitcoin." Right? And it did that. But with encryption, you need encryption keys, and it didn't keep its own encryption keys. So everywhere that it went, it generated this encryption algorithm and it encrypted everything and then had no way of unencrypting it. So even if it did, if you paid money, if some people paid money, if they did that, it would have no way of getting back to you and be like, "Oh yeah, let me unencrypt that for you." So it was just it was good with the technical stuff and just paid no attention to actually wanting to collect the money. And then further, the actual Bitcoin address, they have no idea where it got the Bitcoin address from. They don't know if it was hallucinated outright or if it pulled it from training data. They think it pulled it from training data. So someone out there might be getting a whole lot of Bitcoin just randomly put into their address with no idea like where it's all coming from and why it's there, which is just hilarious to me. Yeah, I thought I'd just end with a funny story that it's a super advanced AI. It was able to be jailbroken. It was able to find all these vulnerabilities. It was able to get that, and then it's just like typical LLM. It just fumbled. There has to be something in it fumbled, and that was it. Actually, getting the money is nope.
Yeah. So two questions for me here. One, obviously this had to have a starting point. Somebody unleashed this thing, right? That's the first question. And then the second question is really, so if I'm understanding this correctly, usually when things like this happen, there's a human there and they're trying to extort somebody or some company. And this agent just didn't realize the step two to extortion, which is actually getting the money into their pocket. Because what are they going to use it for? And then, so maybe a three-part question. What happens like when the next one actually finishes the step two of the extortion? And this funny story actually turns scary.
Yeah, and I think that's the moral of the story. So the moral is we're still early with AI, and seeing this like it did the destructive action. There are people out there with no longer access to their files. So that part's real. It's not funny to them, especially if they also paid and didn't get access. They got double tapped there. But this may have even been a proof of concept. So attribution is something that they're working on. Since this was a pretty recent story, we actually don't know who did this. That takes time. There's a lot of little things you have to do to find out who did it. But it's the precedent it sets. We are now seeing an agent do all this on its own. And yes, this was a fumble, but it's a lesson learned for the attackers. They're going to clean up the fumble, or they're going to put it into some training data that will make sure their prompt or however this was generated is fixed, right? So this is probably just an early, it's funny, but this is an early warning sign of anybody who's exposing resources to the internet. These kind of bots are going to be on your tail. They're going to be looking for those vulnerabilities and they're going to be trying to attack you. It's probably going to be the paradigm we've been talking about. You're going to need your own security solutions that are going to have to ramp up in speed. That's going to increase cost. Probably a lot of people are going to get blue team agents and just do the same thing where they're just defending, and we have the internet's being full of red team, blue team agents everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that's the future.
I think that was a good topic to end off on. Typically, we go through the chats. There weren't many today. If anybody has any last-minute questions, feel free to answer them now before we wrap up. Before I do, I'll just include here, that's the YouTube channel. That's Chris's YouTube channel. You can copy-paste those into your URL and check it out. Subscribe on YouTube, or go to YouTube, type in Exploring ChatGPT Live, and type in Toxsec, Toxsec. Subscribe to both channels. And yeah, I guess just maybe there's a couple in here. Might as well touch on.
Yeah, I think we had some people for Happy 4th of July, everyone. A little less
Yeah.
questions. I also just noticed that at the top, they have a new button, questions only. That's cool.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm open to
Thank you.
anything. People can have their own conversations in the chat if they want to. Flexen says 200 ain't much to pay for that much power. Price will explode soon. Take advantage. Yeah, that was in regards to Fable token costs. I agree. I think if that was like reasonably viable for them, they probably would do that. I think maybe that's probably not even enough to make it make sense.
Right.
See Farida. Hey, Farida. I'm not going to do that one. Farida, by football, do you mean soccer? Not really. I don't really watch too many sports. I watch chess.
I watch chess because Magnus Carlsen, super interesting guy, but never got crazy into it. But maybe there's a game on right now.
Probably. Yeah.
Although
yeah.
I don't really keep up with it, but I saw this is the first time in the history of it where the U.S. has won 3 like matches in a row. So like they're actually doing pretty good. I don't know if that's still true, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
good
not
job,
watching,
guys.
but I'm rooting for the home team, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Chris, so much as usual, especially on July 4th for joining in the live stream. Thank you, everybody, for being here as well. And we'll wrap it up. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.